The movie opens at a large military ceremony attended by hundreds of soldiers, some still serving their country, others already retired and moving on with their lives. In the middle of the crowd, there's a group of young men who clearly look hardened by life. They're sitting in a corner of the event causing a disturbance, playing around, bullying a weaker kid, throwing paper airplanes, making a huge mess, and even tossing food on the ground. It's an extremely irritating scene. But what happens next is even more upsetting. One of those young men grabs a stray dog, and instead of showing it mercy or kindness, he starts torturing it. The older veterans at the ceremony witness the scene and are deeply disturbed by the suffering the poor animal is going through. One elderly man can't stay silent. He walks over to the young man abusing the dog, grabs his arm, and pulls him away, allowing the dog to run off to safety. After the commotion settles down, the bullied boy approaches the old man and thanks him for what he did. They begin talking and soon find themselves discussing the cruelty of human beings. The old man grows emotional and says that humans can kill one another with extreme brutality, even though they belong to the same species. Meanwhile, dogs, despite being animals, often possess more loyalty and compassion than many people. He adds that dogs are the only animals willing to sacrifice their lives to save their owners, and that's what makes them truly special. Then the old man begins telling them about his father, whose name was Flav. This marks the beginning of a flashback that takes us back to 1939, just before World War II broke out. Flav was a noble and honorable man. He graduated from the Military Air Force Academy with excellent grades and was exceptionally skilled at his job, until a strange incident changed everything. One night, a high-ranking general came to visit him. It turned out that Flav was in love with the general's daughter, Tatiana. Naturally, the general strongly disapproved of the relationship and warned Flav to stay away from his daughter immediately, or face serious consequences. But Flav was stubborn and refused to walk away from the woman he loved. He made it clear that he was willing to face any consequences just to stay by her side. The old man then returns to the present and explains that this decision came at a very high price for his father. The very next day, Flav was arrested under the pretext of an alleged disciplinary complaint. He was unjustly sentenced to 2 years in a brutal prison in Beria. After his release, things only got worse. He was reassigned to work as a forest ranger. But fate had something else in store for him. One day, while patrolling the forest, he found a small puppy running from a pack of vicious wolves. Flav saved the puppy and named him Prince. The two quickly became inseparable, and their life together began. The film then takes us to another flashback in 1943. By then, Prince had grown into a strong, courageous dog whose loyalty to Flav knew no limits. One day, while Flav was walking through the forest, he was ambushed by a German spy. The spy pulled out a knife and stabbed him. But Prince didn't hesitate. He suddenly appeared and attacked the spy. This heroic act earned Flav and Prince the deep respect of the Red Army. Over the following months, their bond grew even stronger. They ate together, slept side by side, and played like true companions. After that, when Germany invaded the country, Flav was drafted into the army and took Prince with him. Since Flav was still recovering from his stab wounds, he was assigned to work in the medical unit. One day, their camp was suddenly attacked by German planes. It was a surprise air raid, and many soldiers were killed. Flav was lucky, though. He managed to escape the explosions and reach a safe spot. He gathered the wounded soldiers, loaded them into a vehicle, then grabbed a rifle and started firing at the Germans who were still attacking them. Even though he hadn't held a weapon in years, he was incredibly skilled, and his shots were deadly accurate. But his luck didn't last long. A rocket suddenly landed beside him, and he lost consciousness. At that moment, Prince appeared. He ran quickly to the medical truck and came back with a nurse named Nina. It turned out Nina was Flav's fiancée, and she recognized Prince immediately. She rushed to Flav's side and managed to save him. After the incident, Flav underwent major surgery, and part of his leg had to be amputated. He was then transferred to a public hospital. Nina stayed by his side day and night, and Prince never left him. He was a loyal dog, happy just being near his owner. Prince became popular among the soldiers, and they all loved playing with him. One day, Flav received a visit from his former lover, Tatiana. She told him she had married another man and was happy with him. Flav acted tough and spoke to her seriously, thanking her for coming to see him during his weakest moment, but deep down he was clearly in pain. Months later, Flav finally recovered, though he now had to walk with a cane. Despite that, it didn't take long before he was sent back to the front lines with Prince. The Germans were advancing quickly, and their advanced tanks were causing massive destruction. Flav was transferred to a military dog training base, where many others in situations similar to his were gathered. One day, he heard that Tatiana had been abused by her husband. He rushed to her house and began treating her wounds. Suddenly, Nina showed up and saw the awkward scene. She had already suspected something between them, and now her doubts felt confirmed. Flav tried to explain that it wasn't what she thought, and that he was only comforting Tatiana, but Nina refused to listen and left upset. Later, Flav went to the hospital looking for Nina and found out that she had volunteered for the front lines. He also learned that she was pregnant with his child. The scene then shifts to the military base, where the dogs were undergoing extremely harsh training. The general appeared and announced that starting that day, the dogs would train under tanks so they could get used to the sound of the engines. Their mission would be to run underneath German tanks and blow them up. The dog handlers were deeply disturbed by this news because it meant their dogs would die. But the general refused to listen and threatened serious consequences if they didn't follow orders. The next day, training became even tougher, and the dogs were required to approach moving tanks. Flav argued that dogs are sensitive and wouldn't be able to function under those conditions. The general ignored him, grabbed 2 puppies, and threw them under a tank. The mother couldn't stand watching her pups suffer like that, so she ran under the tank to save them. That proved to the general that dogs could operate in that environment. The general's assistant later explained that they had previously used humans to carry bombs under tanks, but they were too slow and often got shot before reaching their targets. That's why they decided to go back to using dogs. They were faster and had greater endurance. He also said that at first, they trained dogs to drop bombs under tanks and run away, but the dogs would get confused and hesitate, causing the bombs to land in the wrong place. So the only option left was to send them on suicide missions. Flav was deeply upset by this idea because he didn't want to lose his best friend. That night, while he was in his room, he started smashing things out of anger. He even thought about running away with Prince, completely overwhelmed. But before he could do anything reckless, Tatiana came to see him and tried to calm him down. She reminded him of the danger their country was facing. From her perspective, Prince wasn't just an ordinary dog, he was a hero who could help defend their homeland against the enemy. When Flav heard that, he became fired up. He was ready to do anything Tatiana asked, and he decided to stay and fight for his country. The next day during training, he grabbed a bowl of dog food and ran underneath a tank. Prince saw him immediately and rushed over to save him. That loyal dog didn't care about the food at all, he was worried about his owner. Soon after, Flav and his fellow soldiers were finally moved to the battlefield. The general told them that 4 German tanks were on their way and had to be stopped. Explosives were strapped onto the dogs in preparation for the mission. But just as everything was going exactly according to plan, one of the dogs ran toward a Soviet tank. It turned out the general and his men had forgotten to train the dogs to tell the difference between German and Soviet tanks. The dog blew up the Soviet tank, reducing the number of tanks the Soviets could use. At that critical moment, the German enemy appeared, 4 tanks and a large group of soldiers advancing toward the Soviets, who were hiding behind a small hill. With time running out, the general ordered one of his men to send his dog. The man hesitated, of course, but he gathered his courage and sent his best friend on his final mission. The dog bravely dodged bullets, slipped under the tank, and blew it up. His owner was deeply emotional, but he knew the sacrifice would help his country. The second dog was sent out and successfully completed his mission as well. When it was time for the third dog, however, his handler hesitated. Instead of sending his dog, he grabbed the bomb himself and ran toward the tank. It was a terrible decision. He was shot by the Germans almost immediately. When the general saw what happened, he rushed forward to save his man, but he was wounded too. Realizing he wasn't going to survive, he took the bomb himself and blew up the tank along with it. Only one German tank remained, and it was quickly approaching the Soviet base. At the same time, the Germans launched an air attack, injuring many soldiers. Nina, who was working at the front, was among the wounded. When Flav saw her, he left his position and tried to rescue her, but he was injured in the process. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Prince suddenly charged toward the last tank through a storm of gunfire. Then a massive explosion shook the battlefield. The tank was destroyed, and the enemies were dead, but Prince died with them. Flav and Nina witnessed the heartbreaking scene as their beloved dog sacrificed himself for his country. The film then returns to the present, where the people sit quietly, listening to the old man tell his story with deep attention. He explains that his mother, Nina, died a few months later during the siege of Stalingrad. His father, Flav, later volunteered for the Air Force and became a successful pilot. Knowing there were no dogs in the sky, Flav shot down many German pilots during the war. But in 1945 he disappeared. After that, Tatiana adopted him and raised him as if he were her own son, repaying her debt to Flav. She was the one who told him about his father's and Prince's heroic deeds. The story of the film was deeply moving. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.